entering into Staten Island now, and this is one of the places that was really very badly affected by Hurricane Sandy. What we want to do is go and talk to some people about what it was like to be here during the storm, but also the cleanup operation that they're facing now. People's houses have been absolutely gutted by water, and how do they begin to piece their lives back together, and how they cope with this kind of tragedy.
Once the water was like waist high, we had to do something because the water was getting like too high. And I opened up the door and I saw 10 feet of water was the whole block, and it started filling up the house. So we had to do something. I swam out. The water was high enough for me to get over the fence in the water, and then I got onto the next door neighbor's deck.
This, and of course your mum here, it's
Yeah.
Patty, isn't it? And
Yeah.
you were sat on top of the boiler.
I
'cause
sat
you
on the
can't
boiler
swim,
because I couldn't swim.
while your son swims out. What did that feel like, watching him go?
Scary, because he was like, he had to get out. He says, I'm not dying. I'm getting out of here. I'm leaving. We're going to die if we stay in the house. And he just started swimming.
And what did you think when he left? I mean, were you
I
worried
was
about
scared. Yeah, I was. Scared for myself, scared for him because he swam. I was worried.
it? And what happened? You were sat on the top of the boiler. Did you
I
have to
sat on top of the boiler until 7 o'clock in the morning when they came, the Coast Guard, and came and picked me up with the boats.
It smells quite a bit, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
because that's the sewage. Because we got both the water from the beach and there's a sewage over there. So it came both of it in.
And we can see up here the lines from the water.
Yeah.
They're taller than me, so that must be like 6.5, 7 feet there.
Yeah, it
And
is.
so can you explain what happened when you saw the water? Were you in
Well,
here?
I
and
was
then
sitting in that room back there.
Okay,
There's
so
the
should we
one
go and have a look
back
at where
there.
you were sat? Bathroom ruined, and you can see lines right through the house, can't you, Patty? Where the water's come up to.
See, I was sitting on top of that.
You sat on top of that, and presumably then some of your body actually must have been in the water.
Yeah,
Where was it coming up to?
it wasn't that high because the water just like reached up to there.
Yeah.
So I was okay.
But your neighbours stayed as well, didn't they?
Yeah,
I mean,
they were over there. The ones
yeah.
across the street. She was still worried about me. Me and her were yelling back and forth at each other. You're still there. You're still there. Everything else. We were constantly communicating back and
you
forth.
sat in here on the boiler,
Yeah, yelling at her.
half deep in
Yeah,
water,
yelling down at her.
and having a conversation.
Yeah,
through the
yeah.
house.
She was like, anybody out there? I said, I'm still here. I said, and I gave her the address, and I was yelling, I can't get out.
How do you begin to clean up from something
Well,
like that?
well, they said the FEMA's got to come, take pictures, look at the house, check everything out, and they said don't clean up much or anything. Let them see the way the house is and stuff, and then you go from there.
It completely covered my whole entire house. My house was covered from head to toe with water. Looking out your bedroom window and just seeing 10, 12 feet of water on your block, your neighborhood undercover.
What was it like? How did everyone feel? Presumably some people must have been very scared.
It was just, it was scary, shocked, like things were going on that you would have never thought would ever happen, and it was just crazy.
We're hundreds of meters back from the coast. We're driving into the middle of Staten Island, and still we're seeing sights like this, where cars have been picked up and just flung around by the water. And it's just difficult to imagine. We must be, say, half a kilometre, maybe even further away from the coast. And still here, the water was deep enough and flowing fast enough to do things like that. And we've seen that everywhere. There's cars out of place, boats have been picked up and thrown around, houses are off their foundations, there's filth everywhere. Roads are still completely covered, and we've seen fire and police search teams out with dogs trained to actually smell for dead bodies, which is clearly the search for victims of this tragedy is going on.